Welcome into Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. At the top of today's show, CBS has put out an article that links OBJ to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'll let you guys know if I think that's a good idea for the black and gold. Then I'll tell you guys the reason why the Pittsburgh Steelers likely haven't signed Amari Cooper in NFL free agency. Then I'll be debunking yet another negative Rodgers narrative out there in the national media. Then we'll finish up today's show with 4 UFL wide receivers that showed out in the UFL this year that the Steelers can consider signing before the start of training camp. Before we get into the content today, when and if the Pittsburgh Steelers sign a wide receiver or trade for a wide receiver before the start of the 2025 NFL season, make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel, because when and if that news comes, we will have live breaking news coverage on this channel for you guys to enjoy. So if you guys want the latest surrounding the wide receiver search here in Pittsburgh, click that subscribe button and join the largest individually run Steelers news program anywhere on YouTube. All right, so let's start with Odell Beckham Jr., obviously a big name, former All-Pro wide receiver, Super Bowl champion with the Los Angeles Rams. CBS Sports' Cody Benjamin suggests that the Steelers could sign Odell Beckham Jr. this offseason, and his reasoning is because of his ties to new Steelers quarterback Aaron Rodgers. This is what Cody had to say about OBJ coming to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Beckham may not be the standout he once was, but he's also been on Rodgers' radar for years. The Green Bay Packers reportedly tried to land Beckham to pair with A-Rod during the 2021 season, and Rodgers admitted later that he had interest in Beckham following to the Jets ahead of the 2022 campaign. On a one-year deal, why not make the dream pairing happen now? Well, Cody, I'll give you 2 reasons why you shouldn't pair up OBJ and Aaron Rodgers in the Steelers offense. Number one, he hasn't been an impact player ever since he came back from that ACL tear that he unfortunately suffered in the Super Bowl when he was playing for the Los Angeles Rams. He had a season with the Baltimore Ravens and then with the Miami Dolphins last year. Did not go all too well. And then number 2, he wouldn't really add anything, in my opinion, to the Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver room. We'll talk about that here in just a little bit. But first, let's talk about what he's done since that ACL tear. Back in 2021, he missed the entire 2022 season with that injury, comes back to play with the Baltimore Ravens in 2023, and it's not the greatest season in the world. Just 3 touchdowns. He was expected to be that team's number 1 receiver, and he got kind of outclassed by guys like Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman, even though it was a very successful season in Baltimore from a team perspective. Then in 2024, he goes to the Miami Dolphins, doesn't really play all that much, just 9 receptions the entire season on just 55 yards and no touchdowns, pretty much a non-factor there in Miami last year. And, you know, another thing when it comes to Odell Beckham Jr. at this point in his career is that he doesn't really provide much in terms of a run blocker, and that's really something that is going to be important for the Pittsburgh Steelers when they're looking for their next wide receiver too. If they add somebody to start for them and be their legit number 2 receiver, it's going to be important that that receiver is a better run blocker than what Roman Wilson already brings to the table, because right now he is the one that is slated, I think, to be this team's bona fide number 2 receiver. Even though he's completely unproven, he is definitely a better run blocker than Calvin Austin III, who I expect to be the team's 3rd wide receiver that comes in their 11 personnel, otherwise known as 3 wide receiver packages. I think that this group has some great skill sets. DK Metcalf obviously is a true number 1 talent. He's got a little bit of a limited route tree, but he's a great run blocker, great downfield threat, and what he runs at an elite level. Roman Wilson, I think, can be a slot technician, and then Calvin Austin III can't give you really anything in the run game in terms of being a blocker, but he is a really good route-running presence. So I think if the Steelers are going to be bringing in another wide receiver, it's got to be somebody that can A, run block, and B, run good routes, and B, more valuable than what Roman Wilson would provide at that number 2 wide receiver spot this year. And a popular name that I've thrown out there on this channel, that a lot of Steelers fans have thrown out there, that would be a good fit for the Steelers, is Amari Cooper. But this might be exactly the reason why the Steelers haven't signed Cooper and haven't really shown any signs of interest in Cooper throughout the entire NFL offseason to this point. Amari Cooper has a bad reputation when it comes to run blocking. All right, he doesn't give high effort in that area of the game, and for a guy like Arthur Smith, if he has any input into which receivers he's bringing in to the offense this year, I can't imagine that the Steelers front office and Arthur Smith particularly loves Amari Cooper, especially because he had that big decline in production last year. So even though Amari Cooper, you can make an argument he could certainly be this team's number 2 wide receiver. He's still got quick feet. He's still a good route runner. His efficiency numbers went up dramatically when he went to the Buffalo Bills to end the season last year versus when he was with the Cleveland Browns. But the run blocking issues is probably why the Steelers haven't went out and got him and just signed him in NFL free agency. 5 receivers that I think do fit that mold that could be potential number 2 receivers here in Pittsburgh, guys that run good routes and are good run blockers. Romeo Doubs and Dontavian Wicks from the Green Bay Packers both fit that description, which is why we have heard reporting that the Steelers have made calls to the Green Bay Packers inquiring about Doubs and Wicks and what it would cost to get those 2 young, talented receivers in their building. Also, apparently they made a call to Tampa Bay regarding Trey Palmer, who is a little bit, he's 190 pounds. He's not the biggest guy in the world. He's around Roman Wilson's size, but he blocks his ass off as well. And then John Mechie, somebody that's unproven with the Houston Texans, but he runs really good routes, and he's a hell of a run blocker for his size as well. And then Gabe Davis, this team brought him in for a free agency visit just a couple of weeks ago. Didn't sign him to a contract, likely because he's not fully recovered from his injury that he suffered last year. But if Gabe Davis gets healthier in time for the start of the 2025 season, it wouldn't shock me if they had a guy like Gabe Davis because he's big, he's a great run blocker, he's played for successful football teams in the past, and if they're looking for that big, hulking run blocker that can also be a deep threat for them, Gabe Davis would certainly fit that bill. When it comes to Odell Beckham Jr., even though I don't think he's necessarily a fit for the Steelers because he's not a run blocking type of talent, and frankly, his route running and his athleticism have definitely gone by the wayside after that ACL injury, I would love to see him, run it back one more season with the New York Giants before he retires. I mean, he obviously started his career there, became an all-pro there. He's close with Russell Wilson as well, their new starting quarterback, so that would be fun to see those two play in the same offense again. Just to see him in that number 13 in blue again would be really, really cool. So I don't want him here in Pittsburgh, but I would love to see him keep playing, and specifically for the New York Giants. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comment section. Would you sign Odell Beckham Jr. to pair him up with Aaron Rodgers here in Pittsburgh? Type S if you would sign him, or type P if you would pass on him. This will be the pinned comment on today's show. So in just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Fanatics. And while I'm telling you about Fanatics today, let me know if you would sign or pass on Odell Beckham Jr. And with that, let's have word from our sponsor today at Fanatics, where you guys can represent your country and your football team at your 4th of July barbecue this year by going to chatsports.com/PitUSA. This shirt is super affordable, and it looks damn good, man. You're wearing the stars and stripes while also representing the black and gold. You don't have to choose between your country and your football team. You can wear both. It's also a good one to wear once Latrobe comes around with Steelers training camp. So go to chatsports.com/PitUSA. Another benefit to this, guys, is that if you make a purchase today by using our link, chatsports.com/PitUSA, that is down in the comments and description of today's show, click that link and you make a purchase. Fanatics sends us part of the proceeds. So it helps out the channel. You guys get a new t-shirt. Everybody wins here. So if you guys want a new t-shirt just in time for the 4th of July, go to chatsports.com/PitUSA. Now I want to talk about another narrative that surrounds new Steelers starting quarterback Aaron Rodgers, which is that he's a bad teammate, that he's selfish, he doesn't care about others, and that teammates don't really like him, and that he's an asshole. All right, that's kind of a narrative that the media has kind of put on him. But the truth of the matter is, guys, most of Aaron's teammates that he has shared a locker room with throughout his career, especially over the last several years, ever since he's been on his quote unquote spiritual journey, have been quite positive. And there's been some of his former teammates with the Jets that have spoken out, specifically Breece Hall, star running back for the Jets, recently said this about the 4-time NFL MVP. Aaron is a very misunderstood person. Great dude. Comes off to people a certain way, but once you really get to know him, you realize how good of a person he is. When you're losing, somebody has to get let go, but what people don't realize is when stuff is crazy organizationally, then it's hard for players to have stability and win games. I love Aaron. Me and him still have a great relationship to this day. That's my guy. And Hall makes a really good point here that, it kind of harkens back to Bill Belichick's famous saying, good players can't overcome bad coaching. And that's exactly what happened with the New York Jets last year. The defense was terrible, even despite Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams. I think they were 30th in EPA per play allowed last year after the firing of Robert Saleh. They had no run game as well, and then they were switching coaches midseason. And while Rodgers was also dealing with multiple injuries, people forget about that from last season. So I think Pittsburgh's locker room has completely bought into Aaron Rodgers. And the way that I know this is that all the players that have come out in support of Aaron Rodgers, saying that how excited they are that he is their starting quarterback. The most recent was long snapper Christian Kuntz that had this to say about the vibe that Rodgers brings to the Steelers locker room. To me, and I feel like to everybody, he's been nothing but cool and respectful, and he is just a dude. He just happens to be one of the best quarterbacks of all time, but he's honestly just another dude. He sits with the guys at lunch, dinner, whatever it is. The vibe is obviously great. We get a guy like Aaron Rodgers that knows how to manipulate a defense the way he does, and the guy's a 4-time NFL MVP and a Super Bowl champ. Like, what the hell are we talking about here? We got this guy in the locker room. We got a chance. It don't matter. So the vibes are definitely extremely high. And something to remember about Aaron Rodgers as well, guys, is that the Jets players and a lot of the prominent leaders in that locker room, like Quinnen Williams, almost started a mutiny with new head coach Aaron Glenn when he decided to move on from Aaron Rodgers, because there's a lot of support inside the New York Jets locker room for Aaron Rodgers. He was beloved by his teammates there. So the kind of narrative that, players don't like playing for him. I mean, outside of Greg Jennings and Garrett Wilson, I don't know if I can name another player that has gone out publicly against Aaron Rodgers as a teammate. And I think that Rodgers is exactly the type of leader that this team needs. All right, last year with Russell Wilson, it was great to have somebody that was such a great ambassador for the city and somebody that brought a lot of positive energy to the group. But when shit hit the fan with the Pittsburgh Steelers last year, you could tell people were getting annoyed with the over positivity that Russell Wilson brought to the table. And if you've been on a sports team before, of one that has been struggling in particular, the super positive guy is the most annoying guy on the team in those scenarios. You want somebody that says, hey, we got to get our shit right. We got to make the little details count instead of just over positivity all the time. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be able to bring that level of focus and accountability to the Steelers offense. And I think because of that, in part, this offense is going to be the best it's been in many, many seasons. So like the video if you haven't already, guys. We got one more topic to discuss today, which is UFL wide receivers. But before we get into that, if you can click that thumbs up icon for me, really does help out the channel. And if you're enjoying today's show, tell the YouTube algorithm that by taking that half second to click that thumbs up icon. So the final item that we got for you guys on today's edition of Steelers News and Rumors is some top UFL wide receivers for the Pittsburgh Steelers to consider. There have been some successes, most of them kickers from the UFL, but there are some position players that have carved out a role for themselves in the National Football League. The biggest name at the receiver position is Kevontae Turpin for the Dallas Cowboys, and he's not necessarily like a star player for the Cowboys or anything like that. Extremely undersized. He's more of a special teams weapon, to be completely frank with you. But, there is a little bit of a track record here of playmakers from the UFL coming over to the NFL, and some of them having some success. So there's 4 names that kind of stake out to me in terms of the guys that had success this year. The first one is, I hope I'm saying this right, I'm probably butchering this, Siasi Mariner from the Michigan Stallions, who ended up winning the whole thing this year in the UFL. He played great in the championship game. He's tall, 6'2". He's a little bit undersized at 190 pounds, though, so maybe he wouldn't provide the run blocking that the Steelers would probably be looking for, but he's certainly somebody to keep your eye on. He led the league this year, the UFL, in receiving yards, by the way. Then we get into the DC Defenders wide receiver slash running back. He's kind of just like the gadget type of player for their offense, Chris Rowland. He led the league in scrimmage yards this year because he played both running back and wide receiver for them this year. He's undersized, but he brings a lot of dynamic playmaking ability with his legs out in space. And if anybody's going to recreate the Kevontae Turpin success, it's going to be this guy because he's undersized. He's a special teams ace as well. So if you're trying to go to the Kevontae Turpin route, I think Chris Rowland is probably your guy. Then there's somebody that's a former Steeler in Deon Cain. Now, Cain is a little bit older, hasn't played in the National Football League in quite a long time. And, he was with the Steelers a couple of years ago, right? In 2019, he caught passes from Duck Hodges, all right? So he's a little bit older, but he's got a little bit more of the size, and he obviously understands the standards of the Steelers organization. So if they're looking for somebody that had a really successful UFL season that can maybe compete with Rock Taylor as that kind of 6th big body type of receiver in this rotation, he could be your guy. And then another guy that you could consider, another kind of undersized dude, Cornell Powell, also with the DC Defenders, also had a really, really good season this year and had a really good championship game as well. Now, when it comes to these four guys, I think if you're looking for that run blocking and route running type of combination that we talked about earlier, I think Deon Cain probably makes the most sense. But, do I trust Deon Cain to come in here to Pittsburgh and be this team's number 2 receiver over Roman Wilson and Calvin Austin? Probably not. If you're adding one of these guys, it doesn't really matter necessarily what their skill set is. You just want to get the best possible one, because maybe one of these guys get success in the National Football League. So if you want to go with somebody, you could go with Deon Cain, but because he's a little bit older, maybe you want to go with somebody a little bit younger. But that's just my 2 cents. But let me know down there in the comment section, would you add a UFL wide receiver to the Steelers roster before the start of training camp? Let me know down there in the comment section with a yes or a no. And if you have a specific one that you would like to add to this team, let me know who that is down there in the comments section. Now I'll finish up today's edition of Steelers News and Rumors by Chat Sports. We got more Steelers content coming your way throughout the weekend. And, of course, if Omar Khan makes a big move at wide receiver, at corner, if the TJ Watt extension gets done, we're going to have breaking news coverage for you guys right here on the channel. So click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Until tomorrow, guys, here we go, Steelers.